Hi, folks. This is Dave Schmidt. I want to thank everybody that is joining me, those that have been with me for long periods of time. And again, I want to welcome the thousands of new people who have joined me in these weekly newsletters. And you've come on board in the last, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. There's a couple of things that I want to address. Excuse me, as my nose is itching. You're not supposed to do that when you're on videos. Well, this is the real thing, okay? My nose itches and I got to scratch it. Thank you. Okay. Let me just say a few things here. There's a few basic things I would like to address because there's just so many of you that are so new. And the biggest question that we all seem to have is, when in the world is this going to happen? And what are the rates that I'm going to get paid based on these currencies that I have? And what currencies do I actually get to exchange? Well, what I can say is, for a long time, for almost a year, I quit talking about dates. And it was in last May, 3 months ago, that I was able to get some really good verifiable information that things were looking really good from very solid, reliable sources of people who are the real money changers that I talk about, the real brokers, the real buyers, and the real dragon families out of Asia who have all this money. And they all thought it was going to be coming through back in late May. And then we started running into delays. And it was on my recent trip to Thailand that I was able to find out why, and how, as it was explained to me. And I talked about it a little bit in last week's video and in last week's radio program. And what I had said was, there's a real battle that is going on at the very top. But before that, I want to address it this way. If you're going to look at this from what is called the world of conventional finance, the world of conventional global affairs, then these whole currency exchanges are crazy. They're absolutely crazy. You never hear Wall Street talking about them. You never hear Main Street bankers talking about them because they live in the conventional world of conventional finance. And to them, it's crazy because why? Because the money we are talking about does not exist in the conventional world. An illustration. The total combined gross domestic product annually here in the United States only runs about 16 to 18 trillion dollars. If I am talking about the exchange rates that I am now familiar with the people that are now involved in the private exchanges, and I've got over 11,000 people on my list, and thousands of you have already turned in estimated currency amounts, I can tell you right now, I've probably got somewhere between 300 and 400 people on my list who are going to get more than $20 trillion. What does that tell you? And that's just me, and I'm just a small little guy with a small little list. I just got off the phone talking with a gentleman who is as reliable as can be. He is a man of high integrity. He understands this process. He's been involved in it for over 25 years. He's in touch with some people in another part of the world, and he says, Dave, they have 250 trillion dinar. 250 trillion dinar. I'm in touch with another individual in another part of the world that has a group of people he has brought together, about 500 or 600 people. They have 187 trillion dinar. Then I had another gentleman who once wanted to join in the exchange with me a few months ago, and he had 5 trillion dinar. I right now, on my list, have two people who both have over 2 trillion dinars. Do you know even the person who has 2 trillion dinars at the exchange rate, they will have more money than the total combined gross domestic product annually of the United States? I've got enough people who have sent in currency requests that I would have over 700 to 800 people who would become more wealthy than Bill Gates overnight. See, that's why this thing seems so crazy. And that's why when you're reading all this information that is coming out, all this information that comes out on the blog sites, even in the non-conventional world, it's crazy. Because what happens when you have one individual who's going to get funded and they have, well, it's a group of people, but still it's not very many, and they have 250 trillion dinar. You see, they overnight become more wealthy than the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgans combined. And do you think the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and the Morgans are going to allow that to happen? That's why this thing is crazy. Now, I have said, though, from the beginning, the only place that has the kind of money that could even come anywhere close to funding part of this are the dragon families. And I've been in touch with them. I've made 5 trips to Asia in the last year and a half, and I've met with different factions of them. And my understanding is how it gets relayed to me, there are 13 of those different clans or factions. And the problem is they're fighting against each other. These dragon families, for a long time, had somebody else that was above them. And they were under what was called a 70-year mandate or contract. That mandate ended about 3 years ago. And when that happened, they were kind of released. And so what happened, they started fighting, family infighting against each other about who's in charge and who's the alpha dog and who's the boss. And what's happening is you got some of these families that are benevolent, and you got some of them that are cabal. They are flat out cabal. They fund the cabal. They fund the Rothschilds. They fund the Rockefellers and all those others. And they are the ones that are sending out this deliberate disinformation to keep us off guard, to keep us off base, and to keep this thing going that's so crazy. In my recent discussion, again, that I had with Jason Hill, and from their sources, he says, that kind of money is not going to be released into this world. Can you imagine what that does to a global economy? That all of a sudden you are releasing $200, $300, $500 trillion into an economy where the total annual global gross domestic product isn't even 40 trillion, and you're going to release 10 times that amount? It creates hyperinflation all the way around the world. It really creates hyperinflation here in the United States, where if we had $1 trillion, we wouldn't want to live here because it would be so crazy. You have to at some time come back to a basic reality and ask the hard questions of where's the money coming from and who's going to pay for it. This gentleman that I just finished a phone call with, he's in touch with the Wells Fargo banks, wealth managers. He's in touch with the people at Abbott Downing who are being reported that they're going to handle this stuff and they're going to collect the ZIMs. And I asked him, I says, where's Abbott Downing and where's Wells Fargo coming up with over $100 quadrillion to pay for this? And he says, Dave, I don't know. And they've never been able to tell me. And I says, would you please try to find out? Because that's the basic foundation question. And if that question can't be answered, it really substantiates the source of why most of us have been led down a deliberate misinformation trail. Now let me take the other side. Last Friday, I had reports that those who have already turned in their currencies, and where those currencies were being stored at specific places, those places have all been cleared out. Those currencies have been exchanged, and the buyer has bought in them and has released funds to the paymasters. But here's what my other sources are telling me. The source of the money that's paying for that, and I can go back to the specific individual who is the chair of the board of the specific trust and 2 other board members who are on this trust, and that this trust is what is paying for those currencies that have just been collected. And I know the source of the Dragon family that's paying for those currencies. So I can give you specific hard data facts of where the Dragon family clan is coming from, the trust that is going to, and the trust, and it's actually a combination of a few trusts that are funding the currencies that people have already turned in. Excuse me here, my phone's ringing and I just want to turn it off so you don't hear it ringing in the background. Yeah, the real world, and I'm not editing that out of the videos, okay? But what they have told me is, Dave, that's what's being funded. And they have said that we will make sure the people on your list get funded. But beyond that, they're saying, we don't know where the rest of that money's coming up from because it's not coming from the Dragon families or these Chinese elders that they've all talked about. That's the hard data. That's the real data. That's the real information that I'm telling you from my very real sources. Now, out of confidentiality, obviously, I cannot give you those names. But I am saying is that for those of us who have already turned in our currencies, we are close. Very, very close. I can tell you the reason why it was delayed for 3 months is because you had the dragon families that were cabal families were tapping into the banks and hacking the bank codes so the codes couldn't be released to release the money. That's why they could truly say it was going to happen in a few days, and it was until they got in to release it and they found out the bank accounts had been hacked. They hack the codes so they can't release the money. They don't steal the money. And my information sources are saying that's done. That will not happen anymore. So those folks, yes, are going to get funded. But I can't tell you about these 800 numbers where there's supposed to be millions of people, or these people that are in touch with Wells Fargo Bank as far as the going into the bank to exchange their currencies. I can't tell you where their money's coming from. I don't know, and all my sources are saying that isn't going to happen. That's the real data. Now, for those of you, though, that are on my list, you're asking, how long? And here's what I can say. First of all I am doing right now is collecting a list of names, and that's it. I have asked you that are on the list to send in the amount of currency so I can have an estimation. You don't need to do that anymore. I understand what it is. I've got a picture of a larger number, that an approximation number, and a few more people is not going to change that at all. I just needed to have somewhat of an idea of what I can tell the buyers about this is what I can bring to the table. Okay, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. You got to make sure your name's on the list. And right now, that's all that I'm doing. There is no paperwork to turn in. There is no non-disclosure report to give to me. And there are no currencies to turn in at this time. Nothing happens until those of us in round one are funded. And I'm in round one. And round one, I refer to those who already turned in their currencies. They turned them over. They signed an NDA. And they received a form of a receipt, whether it's an SKR or a Paymaster's report, for what they have turned in. The rest I call round two. Round two will start minimally 1 month after round one is funded, but more likely about 2 to 3 months is when it will start. That's what I can tell you, and that's the timelines I can give to you. And this report is as realistic as I can give it to you. Round one, people who have already turned their currencies, everything I'm saying is they're getting funded. When that is done, all these other reports that people talk about, I don't know where the money's coming from, and none of my sources are saying that that money is not coming forward, because they are not going to release hundreds of quadrillions of dollars into the world global economy. It would crash the whole economic system, and it would play right into the hands of what the cabal want. But also, those people who have funded round one have assured me the people on your list will be funded. But they aren't going to get it overnight. And it's going to take at least probably a couple months before they're going to have anything. And the purpose of that is, I go back to, is what they said, it's to honor the original intentions of the original Bretton Woods Agreement from back in 1948. And if you want to understand that, then go back to my YouTube videos and watch the report. It was about 2 months ago that I talked about that I gave that information out, okay? Well, I was going to try to keep this video to maybe around 8 to 10 minutes. I'm looking at the screen and I'm approaching 15, but this is as real as I can get to you folks, and I just want to say that. And I am saying that because round one's really close, okay? Join me on the radio program tomorrow night. Bring your questions in. Love all of you. Okay, thanks. Okay, bye-bye.